In today's video, I'm going to be discussing healthy ways of responding to the phrase hurt people, hurt people. Now, I'm sure as somebody who has survived spiritual abuse or any other type of abuse, you've heard this phrase before, and it often is used as a way to excuse or justify an abusive person's behavior. And so if you, this is the third part of a series, I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to watch part one and part two. And in part one, I talk about why the phrase hurt people actually is not entirely true. I talk about why it's a myth and why it is often used against people who have dealt with abuse. And it's used as a way to perpetuate the abuse, to excuse the abuse, or to minimize it. So that's covered in part one. In part two, I discuss how you've been conditioned by the experience of abuse itself and by abusive systems to respond to this type of phrase, hurt people, hurt people. And unfortunately, those responses are not very healthy, right? And so they're understandable, but they're not healthy. And so in this video, I'm going to explain healthier ways of responding to this type of phrase that is said. All right. So my name is Dr. Felicia. I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling, where I focus on the treatment of OCD, spiritual abuse, and cultural abuse. So back to the topic at hand. What are some healthy ways to respond to this phrase, hurt people, hurt people? Well, the first thing I'd like for you to do is to understand that that there are different ways in which this phrase is used. And in this video, I'm talking about when it is used as a way to dismiss, invalidate, or just minimize your experience as an abuse survivor. Some people can say hurt people actually is a way of helping you or trying to help you to take whatever happened to you less seriously and put the onus on the other person and make it their issue. And so I understand that this phrase is not always used in a way that's meant to cause harm, but focusing on the times where this is used in this way, what are some ways that you can respond? The first thing I'd like for you to do is to recognize that when this phrase is used to dismiss or invalidate or minimize your experience, you in turn, or you in response, don't want to do that to yourself, right? So if someone else is telling you, well, this person hurt you because they're hurt, and then you start to think, well, gosh, maybe it's just because they're hurt, or whatever your thinking process is, you are now dismissing and invalidating your own experience. It's important that you don't do that. And a way in which you can, I guess, just give validity to your own experience is to understand that two things can be true at the same time. So yes, the person who was abusive was also hurt, right? But also you have been hurt by that abuse. Everybody in the entire universe has been hurt by somebody at one point or another, and they did not respond in an abusive manner. So it's really important that you don't take on the job of the abusive system or the abusive person and just invalidate or dismiss your own experience. Another thing that you want to do is make a point to not excuse the behavior. And so when these statements are made, it is often done from a vantage point of giving the person who, either the person or the system that engaged in the abusive behavior, kind of like a free pass, I guess is the best way I can describe it. Now, whoever is saying hurt people is not going to come out and say, oh, well, I'm going to give the person that abused you a free pass. They're not going to say that, but the words and the actions and the manner in which they're saying this is pretty much saying, look, you need to focus on why they hurt you instead of the damage that the hurt has caused. And so being aware of that, it's really important that you don't do the job of the abusive system and put your focus somewhere else. And what I mean by that is it is not your job to figure out why the person who abused you, because if we think about reasons that happen, a lot of times things don't happen for just one reason. And you can put two people, have them experience the same difficult situation, and they're going to respond in different ways. And so while what happened to you was very hurtful, damaging, turned your life upside down, it doesn't mean that that just because a person was hurt or they went through adverse life experiences, that somehow excuses what happened. Okay, so it's really important to understand that it is not an excuse, regardless of whatever that person went through, whatever issues they're still dealing with. It is not an excuse for what happened to you. Okay, it's not excusable, it's not justifiable. It's really important to remember. By the way, if you're finding this content helpful, please take a moment to like the video, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with other people that you think would be helpful. What this does is it helps the YouTube algorithm get this out to other people like you who benefit from this content. So if you haven't done so already, please take a moment to do so. Thank you. So another reason why people may use the statement hurt people is it's a way to prioritize reconciliation and focus less on change behavior, right? So sometimes when people are saying this, they want you and whoever that person is, or whatever that system is, to just get back together, right? It's saying, look, they didn't mean it, they were hurt, push it by and reconcile. And while that might sound good on the surface, it's not practical, right? In order for reconciliation to be true, to be genuine, and to last, there has to be ownership of behavior, and there has to be changed behavior. So that person who was abusive has to own what they did 100%, no excuses. And they also have to be committed to change, and they have to show that change over time. And so in some of my other videos about spiritual abuse, I talk about how it's really important to, that people not only earn your trust, but they must maintain that trust over time. And it's the same way in any type of relationship, right? Regardless of whatever abuse you've been through, trust is not just a one-time event. It's something that's cultivated and maintained over time. And so when people say, oh, well, hurt people, and they're doing it in a way to dismiss what you went through, sometimes it's because they want you and that person reconciling, or you and that system reconciling, is a benefit to the person pushing the hurt people agenda. Okay, so it's really important to do that. And the way you respond when you realize that is you have to, first of all, prioritize changed behavior and your own healing. For some people, reconciliation does occur, and for some people, it doesn't. But you can't force something that is dependent on two parties being in agreement. So you may be ready to reconcile, or somebody else may be ready to reconcile. But if there's no changed behavior, if there's no ownership, there's no commitment, then you're just wasting your time. You may have the appearance of reconciliation, but things are not truly back together, and that facade will not last. And so when you hear that and you think about the implications for reconciliation, put the reconciliation on hold for a while and look at your own healing. Think about how far you've progressed. Think about just markers of healing, right? And markers of recovery, right? Whether it's getting professional help, which I recommend, also journaling and just doing the things that you need to do, self-care, all these other things. You need to look at that and look at those indices and see, well, am I making progress? And then also with the other person, right? They can say that they've changed and they can say they own up, but you want to see changed behavior repeatedly. And then reconciliation can be on the table, or maybe it's not, but you don't want to push reconciliation like the abuser or the abusive system does. Okay. And then another reason that this, another reason why sometimes this agenda of hurt people is forced on you is because the abuser or the abusive system and environment wants the issue to go away. Abusive systems and abusive environments really value looking good over being authentic, right? They value that appearance over authenticity. And so when you are, when you come in as somebody who is defying the narrative of what they want the environment or system to appear to others, they're going to push back and say, well, we just want this thing to go away, right? Sweep it under the rug, and just rush past the healing process, right? Maybe the system or the environment is not equipped to help, or they're not invested in helping. And I that's usually the case, right? A system that benefits from abusive behavior, they're not going to want to invest in helping people heal from that abuse. So it's really important that you recognize that. And when you recognize that, then the way you are going to respond is to understand, well, no, this thing is not just going to go away. It was an important event. It was a significant event. And because you understand that it's not something to just be dismissed, you're going to invest the resources you need into helping yourself recover and for speaking the truth. And that's going to look different for different people. But the point is, you don't want to do the abusive system's job for them. You don't want to pretend that everything is okay just because they are trying to pretend that everything is okay. Right. So it's really important that you do that. And then the last thing is that, sometimes we struggle with statements that have some truth to them, right? And I talk about this quite frequently in my videos, but spiritually abusive statements or abusive statements in general, either, statements that are weaponized by the system, things that they will say, always, I wouldn't say always, but most of the time have some degree of truth to them. And that's the same for hurt people, right? Yeah, it's true. If you take the population of people that have engaged in abusive behavior, most likely, most, not if all of them, have been hurt. And I talk about this in my first video, but there are reasons why people choose to engage in abusive behavior that may have to do with hurt or may not have to do with hurt. They may be doing this out of entitlement and whatnot. But even though it's true, right? Let's say it is true. Yes, this person was abusive, and they were hurt. You can do multiple things at once. So when you realize that that person has been hurt, you can have sympathy for them, right? As human beings, I think that's an important part of our lived experience, is that we can have sympathy. But you can also, with that sympathy, require accountability and also have compassion for yourself. Okay. So you can, let's say the abuser or someone who's speaking for the abuser or and someone who's enabling the abuse might say, well, this person went through all of this, right? They have an illness, they went through a difficult childhood, they had trauma, all these other reasons. And you can sympathize for that and you feel bad for them and feel sorry that they had to go through that really difficult experience. At the same time, you can value your own healing and prioritize your own healing. That's not selfish, even though the abusive system will try to say that it is, but it's not, right? Everybody is responsible for their own healing. Now, there are times and there are situations where we don't have control over what comes our way, right? And so even though that abusive person may have been hurt, it's their job to prioritize their own healing and get help for it, just like it's your job to take care of your own healing. And so when you hear that statement, don't confuse sympathy with like putting yourself on the sidelines, right? You can have sympathy for somebody and you can also value your healing. And that's what I'd like for you to do. Sometimes when people have that sympathy, then they focus all their attention on the sympathy for the abuser or abusive person, and they neglect themselves in the process. And that's a very subtle trap for some people. I've seen this happen and people don't even realize that it's happening. So the way you respond is exactly, what we've just talked about. Have both, have sympathy and also have value for yourself, and make that commitment that I'm not going to neglect my own healing. And it's not selfish. When you are recovering and when you are investing in your wellness, your mental health, that not only benefits you, but it benefits others around you too. So it's not selfish. And not only is it not selfish, it's our responsibility to take care of the minds and the bodies that we've been given. Okay, so I'm going just going to summarize those really quickly, how we can respond. Okay, so the first way that we can, well, before I talk about that, if you're not even sure how to respond, ask yourself this question: am I doing the abuser's work for them? Am I doing the work of the spiritually abusive system for them? And that's important to realize. So in your responses, you want to make a conscious effort not to do that. And we think about abusers and we think about abusive systems, they want everything to just kind of go away. They don't want the abuser to take responsibility. There's so many things that work against your own interest and your own healing. Okay, so I'm going to run down and summarize to some of the ways that you can respond. The first way is just not to excuse their behavior, right? They can behave, anybody who's abusive or an abusive system, they're going to do what they're going to do. And they're it's not your job to excuse their behavior or to explain it away, right? Take that energy and focus it on your own healing and your own recovery, right? Another thing that's part of this response is don't prioritize reconciliation over changed behavior, right? So focus on focus on not what they're doing, but judge what they're doing from an objective place, right? Sometimes we might want to just dismiss everything because we're in such a hurry to reconcile, or we feel pressure from that environment to reconcile. Put that on the back burner for now. Focus on what you need to do to get healed and let the other person work out their own recovery. And if reconciliation happens, great, but make sure it's happening under carefully observed circumstances where the person's committed to change. Okay. And then also remember that you don't want to dismiss or invalidate your experience. Sometimes we might be led to believe that if we dismiss something or if we just minimize it, then it'll go away over time and we won't have to deal with it. But that does not happen. It will come out in other ways. So it's really important to validate your experience, to acknowledge that it happened. And you can do that, through journaling, through professional help, there are other ways to do that. So make sure that you are not sweeping everything under the rug because the abusive system wants you to, by saying, well, hurt people, get over it, right? That's not the way we want to go. And then also just remember that when people, when we hear the phrase hurt people, when you've been through abuse, your tendency might want to be to fix the abusive person or fix the abusive system. And the healthy way of responding to this is everyone realizing that just like they're capable, you're capable, right? We're all responsible human beings, or, whether we feel responsible or not, we are responsible. Nobody can take care of our healing and our recovery for us. We have to do that for ourselves. They have to do that for themselves. You have to do that for yourself. And so understanding that you can have sympathy for somebody who is, acting out of a bad place in their life, but it doesn't invalidate or excuse what you've been through. Okay. And so you can have sympathy for somebody, but you can still require that certain aspects or certain conditions are met before you're willing to reconcile with that person. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What kind of healthy ways or empowering ways have you responded to the phrase hurt people, or just any attempt from an abuser or abusive system to justify or excuse or rationalize abusive behavior? I think that would really help our community here because, I can give my own insights, but It's also great to hear what people have done personally and how it worked out for them. So if you'd like to get more help on your recovery from spiritual abuse, as well as other types of abuse, go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, and you can book a free consultation there. Or you can also click on the link in the description box. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.